Okay, hey everyone, we're going to talk a little bit about the stats for your character. You may also encounter them as being called characteristics, depending on the game. This game calls them characteristics. Different terms, same stuff. Now, you've seen characteristics in all of those other tabletop roleplay games. D&D, your character's got main characteristics. And just to briefly touch on it, even though we're not talking about skills in this video, right? Characteristics are the main things that embody you, you know? If you can take a punch to your body, that's your general toughness. Or, can you push that wagon? That's your general strength, So these are your general characteristics about you. How intelligent you are, generally, is your intelligence, right? But you will specify in certain areas. And that's where your skills come in, okay? But no, don't worry about skills. We're talking about general areas, your characteristics. And in a lot of systems, you'll see something like 4 to 6, or at a push, maybe 8 characteristics usually. But not this game. This game's got more. And you might think, oh, that's kind of more complicated in a way. But there's a reason that they've done it. And they are paying homage to the tabletop miniatures game, basically. So they wanted to repeat those same characteristics from that over into this, so that the two things are working on the same level. It's instantly recognizable, and then they've added a few things around it as well to flesh it out for the tabletop roleplay experience. So, in the miniatures game, for instance, two little minis confront each other and they start fighting in close combat, and you compare their relative weapon skills. And then the one that bests the other in weapon skill manages to, hit. Well, the one that's trying to hit, can they best the other person's weapon skill? Then they will hit if they do. It's kind of that. And then before they get a turn back. So that's weapon skill. And that's effectively the same here for fighting in melee combat. So you can see that that says direct carryover. Then we've got ballistic skill. So rather than it being something like with D&D where, I don't know, like you fire with a bow or something, and that would be ported off to your dexterity characteristic, stat, here it's ballistic skill because that's from the game. So whether you're firing a gun or a cannon or a bow, or whether you've got a sling or whatever it is, it's all your ballistic skill. And just to you don't get confused, and the books pointed this out as well, it's called weapon skill and ballistic skill, but they aren't skills, all right? So ignore the fact that skill's in the name. It's just the fact that they are carrying it over from the miniatures game. It is a stat. It is a characteristic. Weapon skill stat, right? Ballistic skill, also a stat. Okay, your chance to hit with ranged attacks. And then here's a basic one, strength. Of course, just general strength, general toughness, your physical hardiness. Harsh conditions, things like that, how long can you wander through that cold before dropping? Your initiative. Now this is from the tabletop miniatures game. When you've got 2 units fighting in combat, which one's going to get to strike first? Because whoever gets to strike first, they can cut some enemies down, and then there's fewer enemies to fight back, that round. So it's quite a big thing. And here in initiative is in tabletop roleplay games, and it just determines what order all the characters and the NPCs will fight in. And other kinds of quick thinking sometimes. And sometimes it might apply to your intuition and around perception as well. So the stat's doing a fair bit of heavy lifting in of itself as well. And, there is a little bit of homebrew that's tied in and around initiative in like a later that's been muchly debated rule that's come up just for 4th edition of this game, which this is. But we won't confound you with that right now. And then we have agility. Now that should be pretty straightforward, right, as a characteristic. Okay, we've seen that in tabletop roleplay games before. But this is where it gets interesting. Because yes, we have agility, but the stat following it as a separate stat is dexterity. We have agility and dexterity. What? How do they coexist? That I stared at that and I had a moment, I have to admit. So I'm going to read this directly from the book, from page 34 of the core, right? And so that we can understand this together, okay? How these two characteristics behave. Because usually they are synonymous in games. Some games will call it one, some will call it the other, but they are both the same and they will always do the same. But not here. So we've gone for more stats and somehow that seems to be working. Okay, agility. Verbatim. Physical coordination and natural athleticism, and the basis for things like running, riding, and hiding. Agility is also used for dodging blows in combat. Okay, how agile you are to dodge the blows. Okay, so they've kind of split the typical stat 2 ways, and some of the features have gone into agility, the natural kind of quickness to jump out of the way, you know, how lithe your body is to do so, how elven you are. And then the other one, dexterity. And neither one of these is for firing weapons, of course. You know, you've got to just unlearn that. That's mad, isn't it? So we've got that, and we've got a firing ranged weapon stat as well. Okay, dexterity. Your affinity for performing fine and delicate manual tasks, like playing a musical instrument or skilled manufacturing. It will also help you with things like sleight of hand and picking pockets. So those things that sometimes they sometimes get bundled in as skills in some systems, like sleight of hand and things like that. But here we have dexterity as the stat before, and then there might be skills under it as well. But, you know, okay, right. Again, let's not worry too much about skills. We are talking characteristics. And we have intelligence. So this is just your thought analysis, understanding. You want to try and heal someone, you'd use that. If you want to try and evaluate the worth of something, or do you have knowledge of this particular thing? What's this stone here? Like a history check. It all comes back to, you know, your intelligence and what have you. Your willpower is basically your strength of mind and how quick that can cave in, or how much you can hold out, and resisting the influences and coercion of persons or things. See Chaos Gods earlier. Yeah, do you remember I said about like the Slaneshi soporific musk, right? They start like spraying their perfume to start making you crazy and attack all your buddies, except the perfume's coming out of their armpit slits or wherever it's coming from. That's probably the polite version with Slanesh. And, you know, can you resist being mind controlled by this kind of thing? Hey, you'd go straight to willpower. That's your buddy there. Fear, terror, things like that. Can you resist those things? So that makes sense, right? In the tabletop, we'd roll leadership for it, but there is no leadership stat. And then we've got fellowship, finally. And the fellowship characteristic is just, you know, your ability to speak to people, to manipulate them, coerce them, lie to them, be likable with them, I guess, chat to locals and find information. It stays here even for pious characters, communicating with your deity. You don't want to get that wrong, do you? I mean, you know, they might give you the wrong kind of blessing. And so, Brill. Okay. And, oh, that wasn't the last one. And then technically the last one would be wounds. And wounds is the, wounds comes from the miniatures game, actually. So it's another knock-on from how many hits you can take, how many wounds you can take before you're dead. So it's just the same. It's your HP, your health. So they're paying it back to the miniatures game. And of course you have a movement characteristic as well, but which, just like in any game, it's fairly self-evident. Right, that's our characteristics covered. We've gone into a bit of detail in around the world as well, but I'll see you at the next one where we shall expand in some other areas. Bye.